Chapter 11. Looking at a fool. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gu Dai was in the most luxurious room, the presidential suite of the hotel. She stared intently at the computer screen, which was filled with lines of code that ordinary people couldn't understand. After a while, Gu Dai closed the laptop and leaned back on the sofa, stretching lazily. Gu Dai knew that Gu Ming wouldn't give up easily. She had felt suspicious when she was at the company and had just checked to find out that he was actually trying to transfer all of the company's assets overseas. That if he succeeded, she would be left with an empty shell. Fortunately, she discovered it in time and managed to stop it. The thought of Gu Ming's frustrated and furious reaction when he realized his made Gu Dai happy, and her smile became even more radiant and sincere. These 3 years felt like a dream to her, and when she thought about it now, it seemed surreal because her personality during her amnesia was completely different from her current self. Gu Dai decided to have a good sleep and wake up as a new person. Just as she was about to go to the bedroom to rest, her computer made a notification sound. It was a special alert tone used in the hacker community. Gu Dai thought for a moment and decided to check what it was before going to rest. But after opening the email, her face showed no expression, and she threw it into the trash bin without hesitation. Song Ling from the Song Group wants to cooperate with her. Humph, the trash bin is a better fit for him. The next day, in the morning, Song Ling sat in the car on the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Has that woman left? Song Ling asked Zhao Xian, who was sitting in the passenger seat. No. Zhao Xian answered softly, then saw through the rear-view mirror that Song Ling's face showed an expression of, I knew it. Zhao Xian was almost sweating coldly when he saw Song Ling's expression, and he hurriedly added, she didn't go home. Madam didn't return to the villa last night. Song Ling's face turned dark, but soon returned to normal. He murmured softly, so she's avoiding going home at night just to dodge the divorce. But it's useless. I've spent an entire night devising hundreds of ways to make her agree to the divorce. At this moment, Zhao Xian shrank his neck, wanting to cover his ears with his hands. He couldn't understand why Song Ling would voice his thoughts aloud. Wasn't he afraid of being slapped in the face? Moreover, Zhao Xian felt that this time, Madam didn't seem unwilling to divorce. Although Zhao Xian thought so, he didn't dare to say it out loud. After all, he had a family to support, and he needed this job. Zhao Xian didn't expect that just as he thought about needing this job, the next second, he casually glanced out of the car window and saw Gu Dai already standing at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Zhao Xian was speechless. Although he saw her, he didn't have the courage to tell this to Song Ling. He carefully lowered his head, almost shrinking his entire body. The more he feared, the more he would experience. The next moment, Song Ling's questioning followed, Assistant Zhao, what's the matter with you? I. Zhao Xian stammered, unable to make sense of his words. Song Ling glanced at Zhao Xian and said indifferently, forget it, you probably don't have anything important. I'll go to the lobby and wait to see when that woman will come. Song Ling then got out of the car. But Song Ling didn't expect to see Gu Dai as soon as he got out. The way Gu Dai dressed had completely changed. The red dress added a touch of charm to her, a stark contrast to her previous appearance. Song Ling was momentarily flustered when he saw her, then his expression turned moody again. Song Ling took a few steps forward and scolded, who let you dress like this? Have you forgotten that I don't like you dressing this way? Or are you trying to seduce someone? After Gu Dai heard Song Ling's words, she looked him up and down with an expression as if she was looking at a fool. Then, she disdainfully turned her gaze away, suppressing the urge to beat him up. However, Song Ling didn't know about Gu Dai was trying her best to control her emotion. When he saw her expression, he became furious and asked, Gu Dai, what's the look on your face? Gu Dai didn't just allow Song Ling to bully her, and she directly replied, her red lips slightly parted, the look you give to a fool. Chapter 12. Divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Song Ling looked at Gu Dai, his eyes piercing, and spoke coldly with an emphasized tone, Gu Dai. What's wrong? Isn't what I said right? We are a couple about to divorce, but you still interfere in everything. Isn't that foolish? Gu Dai didn't back down and rebuttal back. Song Ling was so angry that Gu Dai actually had the guts to talk to him like this. His breathing became heavier. He said, Don't forget, Gu Dai, we haven't divorced yet. Gu Dai rolled her eyes. She really didn't want to argue with Song Ling and was impatient. So you want to change your mind? Song Ling was stunned, to the point where even his breathing was chaotic for a few seconds, but he quickly recovered and sneered, Change my mind. How could I? I know you must be saying this deliberately, just to avoid divorcing me. I won't give you what you want. Gu Dai didn't know what to say. Although the process was speechless, the result was good. In just a few minutes, a freshly issued divorce certificate arrived in Gu Dai's hands. Gu Dai looked at the divorce certificate and sighed lightly, finally divorced. If it was 1 second later, I couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing Gu Dai's appearance at this time, Song Ling snorted and then said, So you regret it now? Let me tell you, even if you do, it's useless. We're already divorced. Gu Dai didn't understand why Song Ling always assumed she would regret it. After all, how narcissistic would someone have to be to always think that way? She didn't want to deal with Song Ling anymore, but she still couldn't help but say, Mr. Song, don't be afraid to see the doctor. It's not too late now. What do you mean? Song Ling was a bit confused when he heard Gu Dai's words. It took him more than 10 seconds to understand, and he said, with disbelief in his tone, Are you saying I'm sick? Gu Dai was even more shocked than him, feigning confusion, Did I say that? I don't remember saying that. It's just what you think, Mr. Song. Song Ling wanted to say something back, but Gu Dai didn't give him a chance, because Chu Min came to pick her up. Seeing Chu Min's red car, Gu Dai felt disgusted for a moment and didn't want to get in at all. However, compared to Song Ling, she thought she could tolerate it for the moment. Gu Dai didn't wait for Chu Min to drive over and quickly ran towards the car. Song Ling's words were swallowed back due to Gu Dai's action, but his gaze still subconsciously followed her figure. It was because of this that Song Ling saw Gu Dai running to a car, and a man got out of the car to open the door for her. Song Ling's eyes narrowed when he saw the car. He recognized the car was a unique custom vehicle, one of a kind in the world, that had been auctioned off for $3 billion by a mysterious man. But how did Gu Dai know such a person? However, it didn't matter. Song Ling's face grew darker and darker, realizing that Gu Dai had hooked up with a rich man. No wonder she is so eager to divorce him, and is dressed like this to seduce this man, right? She really is a vulgar gold digger. As Song Ling looked in Gu Dai's direction, Zhao Xian also looked over, but his main focus was on Chu Min. However, he could only see a side profile of the man, and it was too far away to make out anything clearly. Zhao Xian felt that the man looked familiar, like the apprentice who often stayed by the side of a legendary doctor. However, he had only seen a photo of the legendary doctor's apprentice many years ago, and it was very blurry, so he couldn't be sure. Many years ago, Song Ling had undergone surgery. The person who performed the surgery was a legendary doctor anonymously hired by the Song family. The surgery was successful and the legendary doctor left. However, after Song Ling woke up, he had been persistently searching for that legendary doctor for many years, but still to no success. Therefore, when Zhao Xian realized that the man might be the legendary doctor's apprentice, he subconsciously wanted to tell Song Ling. However, when he turned his head and saw Song Ling's gloomy expression, he hesitated. Chapter 13. Restructuring the company. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chu Min cautiously looked at Gu Dai, who was looking down to fiddle with her pendant tassel since getting in the car. However, he quickly looked away, only to find himself unable to resist stealing glances at her again. After he did this a few times, it was Gu Dai who couldn't stand it any longer. She looked up at Chu Min and spoke in an emotionless tone, "If you want to say something, just say it. Your constant turning of your head is making my eyes hurt." Really? It wasn't until Gu Dai pointed it out that Chu Min realized he had been turning his head to look at her repeatedly. He scratched his head sheepishly, laughed awkwardly, and then softly shared his thoughts, "That kind of man is not worthy of you at all. Boss, don't be sad over him. There are 3.5 billion men in the world, and I don't believe there isn't someone better than him." Chu Min quickly observed Gu Dai's expression after he finished the sentence. Seeing that her face didn't change, he finally had the courage to continue, "For example, my older brother is an excellent man. He's not only wealthy, but he's also 185 centimeters tall and has a handsome face. Moreover, both of you are genius hackers, a perfect match. Most importantly, he likes you. If you were with my brother, our whole family would like you." Gu Dai slowly furrowed her brows as Chu Min talked, then shook her head helplessly, "Although I'm divorced and you want to comfort me, there's no need to bring up your brother. If Chu Han knew you were scheming behind his back like this, he definitely wouldn't let you off easily." Chu Min subconsciously wanted to argue, but he could only hold back his words as they reached the tip of his tongue. After all, his brother liked her but didn't confess his feelings, secretly admiring her instead. As a result, when he expressed his brother's thoughts now, Gu Dai didn't believe him and thought he was lying. Seeing Chu Min's aggrieved expression, Gu Dai softly comforted him, all right, I understand your intentions. Don't worry, I don't like Song Ling. I'm just lamenting my wasted 3 years." After Chu Min heard Gu Dai say that she didn't like Song Ling, he breathed a sigh of relief and then said, furious, "That scoundrel was the luckiest man in the world when he got to marry the boss. Yet, he didn't cherish you. I'm sure he'll regret it in the future." At the same time, Chu Min made a mental note to find an opportunity in the future to give Song Ling, that scoundrel, a few good beatings. Gu Dai glanced at the time and then casually said, "All right, let's not talk about Song Ling anymore. It's getting late, and we need to hurry up and clean up the mess left by those people who are just wasting time in the company." "Okay." Chu Min then became serious and immediately agreed, urging the driver to speed up. When they arrived at the company, Gu Dai asked Lin Sheng to organize a meeting. Half an hour had passed since Lin Sheng's notification, and not everyone had arrived yet. Gu Dai expected this, so she wasn't anxious and just casually sat in her chair, at the head of the table, waiting. Finally, 2 hours later, everyone arrived. The person who led the group was Gu Shan, followed by 4 or 5 people. They all looked arrogant, and without saying a word, they sat down, clearly showing Gu Dai that they didn't take her seriously with their actions. Gu Dai chuckled softly at the scene. She was not getting angry, but just gave a slight nod to Lin Sheng beside her. When Lin Sheng received the instructions, he stood up and listed the names of those who were late one by one. He also read out the performance of these people in the company according to the documents Gu Dai had given him earlier. After Lin Sheng finished, Gu Dai chuckled, and then with a slap on the table slowly cracked in front of them and collapsed on the ground. Everyone present looked shocked as they witnessed this scene, especially those whose names had been called out earlier, their hearts trembled. Gu Dai composed herself and spoke coldly, "Being late, leaving early, skipping work during working hours, bringing friends and relatives to the company, and a series of other issues, all these are your wonderful deeds. What do you think this is, a marketplace or a retirement home? If you can do the job, do it, if you can't, leave. Do you not understand this principle, or do I need to teach you?" Gu Dai's voice wasn't loud, but it was powerful. Then, Gu Dai turned her head to look at Lin Sheng. She said, "Uncle Lin, arrange for someone to collect the fines from those whose names were just called out and then dismiss them one by one. Don't miss a single person." Chapter 14. Bunch of fools, you are listening at novelfull.audio. As Gu Dai finished, the people below could no longer just sit still. In particular, Gu Shan was the first to make a fuss. Gu Dai, on what basis can you fire us? Even Gu Ming hasn't said anything. Besides, according to family seniority, I am your uncle. Some of the others had been frightened by Gu Dai's table-slapping behavior earlier and didn't dare to speak now, but after Gu Shan's words, they nodded their heads non-stop to show their support. Gu Dai glanced at this group of people, and sneered in her mind. These people were all related to Gu Ming or her aunt, Lu Min. She might as well clean them up together. Uncle. Gu Ming. Gu Dai repeated softly and then looked directly at Gu Shan, but don't forget who the chairman of the company is. Gu Shan didn't expect to lose face in front of so many people and stormed out of the office angrily. The people who followed him also left in a hurry. Gu Dai glanced at them and then withdrew her gaze indifferently, charged the damage to the company's property to Gu Shan. Lin Xing responded, okay. The remaining people had no family connections, but based on her investigation last night, they were truly talented and hardworking individuals. They never did anything against company regulations, yet they were bullied by Gu Shan every day. Now that she, Gu Dai, was the chairman of the company, she would never let such a situation happen in the company again. Gu Dai turned on the computer and gestured for everyone to look at the big screen. Now let's take a look at the PowerPoint. This is the jewelry project I've planned for the next month, with a pre-sale target of 500 million. What? 500 million. Gu Dai's nonchalant words made the entire office boil. They couldn't believe it, as this was a challenge they had never encountered before. But President Gu, the highest project our company has had in the past few years is just 100 million. Suddenly jumping to 500 million is quite a challenge. Moreover, the company has never been involved in the jewelry industry before. Isn't this also somewhat risky? Everyone raised these concerns, which were not unreasonable. Gu Dai had thought about these issues and she planned the project. However, faced with such concerns, Gu Dai encouraged everyone instead. You are all ambitious, young, and motivated, with great dreams in your minds. As long as you believe in yourselves and unleash your full potential, anything is possible. Gu Dai paused for a moment after she finished, then continued, let's talk about something more tangible. The higher the pre-sale amount, the higher the bonus for everyone. When these words were heard, everyone was excited. After all, in the past, not to mention whether there would be bonuses, even after they finished the project, it would be snatched away by Gu Shan and his group. After the meeting, Gu Dai walked to the office door and saw that Gu Ming was already inside, looking sullen. It seemed that he had been waiting for a while and was getting impatient. Gu Dai looked down for a moment before she raised her head up, then she walked in a carefree attitude. She asked, Uncle, what brings you here? Without Gu Ming speaking, Gu Dai had already guessed that it was probably about the project she had just discussed in the meeting. Sure enough, the next second, Gu Ming said, Gu Dai, I just heard that you have planned a jewelry project with a pre-sale target of 300 million. Isn't this nonsense? Gu Dai corrected Gu Ming's words gently, not 300 million, but 500 million. No matter how many millions, it's all nonsense. How could our company possibly achieve such results? It seems that you lack experience. If you continue like this, it's a question of whether the company can continue to exist. You should step down from the chairman's position as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll ruin your parents' efforts. Gu Ming didn't really care about the millions. It was just an excuse he found. His main goal was to take over the company. He had arranged for people to transfer funds overseas, but somehow, yesterday he was told that the funds had been intercepted and couldn't be used. Worthless, all of them. Gu Ming was shaking with anger, and he hadn't slept all night. As soon as he heard about Gu Dai's words at the meeting, he didn't hesitate to come over. However, Gu Dai sneered at Gu Ming's words and stared at him. If I remember correctly, when my parents were alive, the starting pre-sale amount for a project was 800 million. So uncle, how have you been managing the company these years? Chapter 15. Heart skipping a beat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gu Ming didn't know how to respond to Gu Dai's question. He couldn't speak for a moment. He hadn't expected her to question him. However, even though this was the case, Gu Ming still tried to argue. No matter how I've managed the company in the past 3 years, it's definitely impossible to reach a pre-sale target of 500 unless you can invite the world's top supermodel Su Ting. But Su Ting is a high-end model who can't be invited even with money. Gu Ming didn't believe that Gu Dai could invite him, which meant that she definitely wouldn't be able to achieve the 500 million pre-sale target. After Gu Ming thought of this, his eyes rolled around before he suddenly came up with a good idea. Gu Dai immediately noticed Gu Ming's intense gaze and didn't need to think too hard to know that he was up to no good. As expected, in the next second, Gu Ming said, "Why don't we make a bet? If your pre-sale target reaches 500 million, I will willingly accept you as the chairman. But if it doesn't reach 500 million. Gu Ming didn't finish his sentence, but Gu Dai knew what he was thinking. However, she wasn't afraid, and with a light chuckle, she took over the conversation. "If I don't reach this target, I'll give you the chairman's position." "You said it." Gu Ming didn't expect Gu Dai to be so cooperative. She had agreed without him even having to resort to any tricks. However, Gu Ming was still cautious, fearing that Gu Dai would renege on her promise. So he took out his phone, opened the recording function, and said, "Your words now are just empty talk unless you say it again, and I have evidence." "Of course, no problem." Seeing Gu Ming's actions, Gu Dai didn't feel angry. She was also worried that Gu Ming would deny it in the end, and he had just provided her with the idea of recording. So, in the next second, Gu Dai also took out her phone, opened the recording function, and said to Gu Ming, "I'll record it on my side as well. You don't mind, do you, uncle?" When Gu Ming saw Gu Dai turn on the recording function, he couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed. Subconsciously, he wanted to ask her if she didn't trust him. However, he could only hold back and say, "I don't mind, of course I don't mind." Gu Ming laughed and said self-deprecatingly, "That's good. It was just me being narrow-minded earlier, fearing that my niece would have double standards." Gu Dai and Gu Ming repeated their bet and recorded the conversation. Both parties were very satisfied. Especially Gu Ming, with a slight smirk, looked at Gu Dai with contempt. The inexperience in her means she doesn't know any better. She hasn't been involved in the company for 3 years, yet she still has such an arrogant tone. Just wait to give up the company. Although Gu Ming was contemptuous, it was only for a moment. He quickly restrained his emotions and then spoke like a loving elder, "All right, since there are no issues, uncle will go home." Gu Ming didn't wait for Gu Dai's response and left with big strides. Watching Gu Ming's figure leave the room, the color in Gu Dai's eyes turned slightly darker, and she murmured, "Going home. Is he going to his own home?" Chu Min sent Gu Dai information about Gu Ming's activities in recent years last night. Gu Dai was shocked when she saw it. Gu Dai didn't expect that the day after her accident, her uncle and his family moved into her villa. Gu Ming's actions deepened Gu Dai's suspicion that his family might have been involved in her cruise ship accident. Gu Dai clenched her fists, her fingertips turning white from the force. Suddenly, the phone on the table rang, and someone was calling. When she heard the tone, she relaxed, looked down, and was surprised to see that Su Ting was calling. Su Ting. Realizing this, Gu Dai was caught off guard for a moment. A young boy's image appeared in her mind. She was surprised that Su Ting would call her. Gu Dai answered the phone, and the voice on the other end immediately said, "Sister." Gu Dai was lost for a second when she heard the voice, because Su Ting's voice was no longer the way she remembered. It had lost the hoarseness of his voice. Changing period and had become mellow, with a slow tone and a slightly heavy ending. It was more thrilling to her ears than the sound of drums. Gu Dai clearly felt her heart skipped a beat and she raised her hand in confusion to cover her heart. She was wondering if she is a hidden voice enthusiast. Chapter 16. No need to shoot it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sister, you're back, I thought. Su Ting sobbed uncontrollably. Through the phone, Gu Dai could hear some people asking Su Ting in English why he was crying. Is he in a public place? When she realized this, Gu Dai hurriedly whispered some comforting words, don't cry, don't cry. I'm fine now, aren't I? How have you been these years? Pretty good, just always thinking about you. At this point, Su Ting paused, and then continued, for the past 3 years, I've been looking for you, but I couldn't find you. So, I could only work hard, strive to reach the top and get the highest exposure. That way, you would be able to find me right away. Gu Dai felt a little dazed after she heard Su Ting's words. She hadn't expected that so many people had been concerned about her during these 3 years, and her eyes grew a bit moist. Su Ting indeed reached the top, because Gu Dai remembered seeing him on TV frequently over the past 3 years. Unfortunately, she had amnesia and didn't look for him even though she saw him. There were many things Gu Dai wanted to say, but in the end, they all turned into one sentence, thank you. Sister, don't say that. I should be the one thanking you. If you hadn't invested in me and supported me, maybe I wouldn't have reached this position today no matter how hard I tried. No, we shouldn't use such distant words like thank you to communicate with each other. Su Ting even got a little anxious as he spoke. Su Ting's anxious mood also affected Gu Dai for the better, and even made her laugh. She responded, all right, I'll listen to you. Gu Dai heard Su Ting chuckle, and then he spoke fiercely but obediently, sister, I have some fame now. If you need my help, you must tell me, otherwise I'll be angry. Although Gu Ming had just said that after inviting Su Ting, the total pre-sale amount could reach 500 million, Gu Dai never thought about bothering him. But now, Su Ting had just said this. After some internal debate, Gu Dai finally decided to mention the matter. Indeed, there is something I might need your help with. There's a jewelry project in my company that may need you as an ambassador. All right. I'll return to the country tomorrow. Su Ting immediately agreed. However, when Gu Dai found out that Su Ting was still abroad, she hurriedly said, you should focus on your own matters first. This isn't important here, you don't have to come back specifically for it. Su Ting refused, no, I must come back. My sister's matters are the most important in the world, nothing else can compare. Gu Dai felt a bit helpless but still wanted to decline. However, before she could say anything, Su Ting on the other side of the phone had already taken the initiative to speak up. Or are you saying that you actually don't want me to be the ambassador? Su Ting's magnetic voice was low, and there was an undeniable sense of grievance in it. Gu Dai's heart trembled at his voice, and she instinctively denied, of course not. As long as it's not that, then I'll come back. Su Ting's voice changed from grievance to cheerfulness. Even after the phone call ended, Gu Dai was still a bit slow to react, wondering if she had just been tricked. Su Ting, who was abroad, looked at the disconnected phone call and revealed a smile. He felt incredibly happy, knowing that his sister was really back. I told you, Miss Gu is safe, and she has returned now. Zhang Zheng expressed some helplessness but also understanding. After all, when he received the call yesterday, he was just as excited. He just didn't expect the usually calm Su Ting to lose control of his emotions like this. When Su Ting heard Zhang Zheng's voice, he realized that there were people around him. He hid the emotions on his face and returned to his usual cold demeanor before saying, let's return to the country now. Zhang Zheng was stunned and asked incredulously, return now? But haven't you forgotten that there's still an advertisement to shoot? There's no need to shoot the commercial it anymore. He had filmed advertisements before just to increase his exposure and appear on the screen all around the world. But now there was no need for that, his sister was back. The thought alone made Su Ting's heart fill with happiness. Chapter 17. Not used to it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Ting was elate, but he soon regained a bit of rationality, albeit just a little bit. I must return to the country now. Could you negotiate with the advertising manager? If it can be postponed, then postpone it. If it cannot be postponed, then compensate them. All right. Zhang Zheng agreed and immediately contacted the person in charge. The person in charge repeatedly agreed to postpone, almost to the point where he was begging for the delay option. Because they had spent an entire year preparing to invite Su Ting to shoot the advertisement, and Su Ting's fame was exceptionally high worldwide since he only endorsed the top brands. If a company could get Su Ting to shoot an advertisement, it would be like telling the world that their products were good, which could lead to explosive sales. So, after they had finally secured this opportunity, how could they give it up? Therefore, the person in charge repeatedly instructed, Agent Zhang, you must not forget to remind Mr. Su that we still have an advertisement. We don't want compensation, we'll wait for Mr. Su to shoot the ad. Even if it takes some time, we'd be willing to wait for 10 years. Zhang Zheng didn't know how many times he had agreed, all right, I will remember. You can rest assured. Person in charge repeated, please, you must remember. Zhang Zheng said, okay. Don't worry. Gu Dai dealt with matters for a whole day, and the longer she worked, the more furious she became. She didn't understand how someone could manage the company so poorly in just 3 years. The company was almost completely hollowed out, not even 1/10 of what it was 3 years ago. Chu Min was worried that Gu Dai's anger would affect her health, so even though she was furious, he softly advised, boss, don't be angry. You've been busy all day and working with emotions won't be efficient. Why don't I take you to somewhere to relax, and we can deal with this tomorrow? Gu Dai closed her eyes, let out a long breath, and finally agreed, all right. 10 minutes later, the car stopped in the most bustling area of the imperial city. Gu Dai looked up at the sign above her head and then looked at Chu Min. She asked, are you taking me to a bar? Chu Min led Gu Dai inside, talking as they walked, yes, don't judge this bar by its exterior. It may not look as impressive as the others around it, but it's a lot of fun inside. Besides, I've been to many bars, and this is the conclusion I've reached after comparing them all. However, Chu Min suddenly realized something. He stopped, turned to Gu Dai, and asked softly, boss, do you not like it here? If you don't like it, we can go somewhere else. Chu Min felt extremely annoyed at himself. How could he have forgotten that his boss had suffered from amnesia? 3 years ago, she enjoyed spending time at bars, but what if she didn't like them now because of the habits she developed during her memory loss? No. Gu Dai answered and realized that Chu Min had stopped walking. She looked back and saw Chu Min's face full of frustration, and he even slapped his own head. Seeing this, Gu Dai said to Chu Min, I don't dislike it. It's just that I haven't been here for a long time and am a bit not used to it. Let's go in. All right. Chu Min hastily agreed. However, he didn't really believe her and thought she was just comforting him. Thinking of his dazzling boss who had suffered so much because of Song Ling, Chu Min couldn't help but hate Song Ling even more. He was already planning in his mind how to deal with Song Ling so that Song Ling would never forget about what he did. At the same time, Chu Min was prepared. He could take action anytime the moment he received Gu Dai's command. However, within just a few minutes of entering the bar, Gu Dai had already adapted to the environment. Chu Min then realized that everything he had thought earlier was just his overthinking, because Gu Dai was really just a little unaccustomed to it, as she had said. Inside the bar, colorful lights flickered, and the deafening music filled the air, but Gu Dai couldn't help but be immersed in the exciting and energizing atmosphere. The irritation buried in her heart regarding the company and the emptiness from her 3 years of memory loss were all released at this moment. Gu Dai took off her morning suit, revealing the red dress inside, and let her tied-up hair down. She danced on the stage like a vixen. Chapter 18. I'm Not Drunk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 18. I'm not drunk. Gu Dai loved dancing since she was a child, and she was not shy on stage. Within just a few minutes, she had attracted the attention of everyone in the room. At that moment, she seemed to be glowing. When Gu Dai came down from the stage, she still felt somewhat unsatisfied. She smiled and said to Chu Min, who was beside her, I haven't felt like this in a long time. It's so refreshing. Gu Dai felt that she really liked her current life, and every time she recalled her life during the 3 years of memory loss, she couldn't help but feel puzzled. Was that really a life that people could live? She couldn't understand how she had been able to endure it. Boss, have a drink. Seeing Gu Dai lost in thought, Chu Min knew she must be thinking about her life during those 3 years. Feeling sorry for her, he picked up a glass of alcohol and handed it to her. Gu Dai was recalled back from her reminiscence of the past, then she took the glass, all right. As she drank the alcohol, she also felt that her current life was becoming more and more real. However, after taking just 2 sips, she felt something was wrong and slightly frowned. Chu Min had been paying close attention to Gu Dai and noticed her expression change immediately. Realizing this, he asked nervously, What's wrong, boss? Is the alcohol too strong and you're not used to it? If you don't like it, I'll have someone change it for you. It had been a long time since the boss had drunk alcohol, and he had given her a strong drink. Chu Min was very annoyed just thinking about it. He reached out to take the glass from Gu Dai's hand. But before Chu Min could touch the glass, Gu Dai raised her hand and finished the drink in one go. Chu Min stared in amazement, and Gu Dai didn't give him a chance to ask questions. She glanced at him and said indifferently, I'm not used to it, but it's not because the alcohol is too strong, but because it's too weak. As soon as she finished speaking, Gu Dai headed towards the bartender and said directly when she approached, Give me the strongest drink. The bartender was surprised, as it was his first time seeing such a beautiful woman. Gu Dai appeared to be delicate, but she unexpectedly asked for the strongest drink. He was astonished and stuttered, This drink is not good for your health. Chu Min stood aside and saw the bartender's stuttering appearance, knowing that he was another man who had fallen for his boss's charm. He shook his head helplessly, as his boss was not interested in men. Gu Dai, unfazed by the bartender's advice, said, It's fine, I used to drink a lot, and nothing will happen. Just make it. Our boss can really hold her liquor. Back then, a bunch of us all got drunk, and she was still sober. Chu Min also chimed in. After Gu Dai had several glasses of the strong alcohol, she finally felt the effects of the liquor and felt a little hot, wanting to dance. She said directly to Chu Min, I'm going to dance. All right. Seeing Gu Dai's normal complexion and knowing her alcohol tolerance, Chu Min agreed without hesitation. He wanted to go with Gu Dai, but his phone suddenly rang just a few steps after he started walking. He had no choice but to say helplessly, Boss, you go have fun first, I'll be right there. Gu Dai didn't mind. She just waved to Chu Min and signaled him to answer the phone. But as Chu Min turned and left, a flush slowly crept onto Gu Dai's face. She irritably tugged at her collar, wondering why it was so hot and why her vision was somewhat hazy. Coincidentally, her phone rang at this moment. She glanced at the contact's name and read it out loud, Su Ting. In Gu Dai's mind, an image of a handsome and elegant young man appeared. She blinked twice and then answered the call. She said, teasingly, What does my little brother need from his big sister? Su Ting on the other end of the phone was caught off guard for a few seconds, not making a sound. When he spoke again, he found his throat a bit dry, Sister, have you been drinking? Yes, this bar is really as good as Chu Min said. The alcohol here smells so good and tastes so nice. Gu Dai squinted her eyes with a satisfied smile. L.RG, sister, you're drunk. Su Ting said softly. However, Gu Dai didn't agree with this statement and subconsciously argued back, I'm not drunk. Chapter 19. Stern. Looking, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Ting didn't expect Gu Dai to be so adorable when she was drunk, and he couldn't help but chuckle softly. However, his laughter, though brief, was caught by Gu Dai. She pouted unhappily and asked, in a playful angry tone, are you laughing at me? No, no, Su Ting hurriedly denied and then asked, can you tell me where you are so I can come find you? Without any hesitation, Gu Dai told Su Ting her location, I'm at the most luxurious bar in the Imperial City. What's the name of it? I can't remember. As Gu Dai spoke, her voice carried a hint of grievance. Sister, don't worry. I'll come find you. Just don't wander off, okay? When Su Ting heard Gu Dai's grievance, he became flustered and quickly comforted her in a gentle voice. Okay, Gu Dai obediently agreed. However, after she hung up the phone, she immediately forgot her promise and jumped onto the stage, dancing to the rhythm of the music. Gu Dai didn't notice that a camera was already focused on her, projecting her onto the big screen. Everyone in the venue noticed Gu Dai, including Song Ling, who was in a private room on the third floor. Song Ling's eyes were fixed on Gu Dai, dancing on the big screen. Recalling the woman's laughing and radiant appearance while on the phone with someone unknown, Song Ling's face turned dark and gloomy. His hands clenched into fists, his veins bulging due to the force. Sitting on a sofa on the other side, Zhou Xi felt the temperature around him drop significantly as he looked at the angry Song Ling. Zhou Xi noticed that Song Ling was not in the best mood these past few days and decided to take him out to relax. However, not only did they fail to relax, but Song Ling became even more unhappy. He recognized Gu Dai on the big screen, but hadn't they just gotten divorced this morning? So why was Song Ling still angry? Zhou Xi was puzzled, braving the risk of agitating Song Ling. He asked, you two are already divorced. Why do you still get angry because of Gu Dai? Song Ling opened his mouth in anger, but paused after just one word, realizing what Zhou Xi had said. After processing it, he froze. That's right, why am I angry? Seeing Song Ling lost in thought, Zhou Xi mustered the courage to continue, there's a saying that a qualified ex should be like a dead person. Though it's not a pleasant thing to say, I think you may need to learn that. Get lost, Song Ling said coldly. L.RG Zhou Xi shrugged helplessly and agreed, fine. After all, he had said what he wanted to say. It was up to Song Ling whether to listen or not. Song Ling knew that Zhou Xi was right. He shouldn't bother Gu Dai. However, when he saw her bare shoulders and her bright smile directed at others, he felt his heart ache and swell with discomfort. Zhou Xi watched Song Ling stare at the screen with a cold face, gripping the wine glass tightly. He genuinely wondered if Song Ling was about to crush the glass. Zhou Xi wanted to remind him, but he didn't dare to speak, as he still remembered being told to get lost by Song Ling just moments ago. However, Zhou Xi remembered that Song Ling didn't like Gu Dai before. Every time they gathered together and mentioned her, Song Ling's face would turn gloomy and moody. Why is he starting to care now? He glanced at Song Ling, still perplexed by the situation, but each time he looked over, Song Ling was still staring intently at the big screen. Zhou Xi was curious, wondering if the scene was really that interesting. Zhou Xi also looked up at the screen. He had only glanced at it earlier, but now, after a closer look, he was shocked. The woman on the big screen was stunningly beautiful, unrestrained, and incredibly eye-catching, attracting everyone's attention and making it impossible not to focus on her. But Zhou Xi remembered seeing Gu Dai before, and although she was beautiful at that time, she wasn't as gorgeous as now and seemed to be missing her soul. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the side. Startled, Zhou Ci quickly turned to look, only to see Song Ling's figure disappear out of the door, as he hurriedly rushed downstairs. Chapter 20. You look good. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let her go. After Song Ling rushed down, he shouted at Su Ting, who was standing next to Gu Dai. Song Ling's voice was loud, attracting the attention of many people, but he didn't care. He stepped forward quickly, grabbing Gu Dai's other hand, his eyes tightly fixed on Su Ting, asking aloud, "Who are you?" Su Ting coldly watched Song Ling without speaking. He just reached to remove Song Ling's hand from Gu Dai's hand, but Song Ling held her hands tightly. Su Ting was afraid he might hurt Gu Dai, so he gave up. He then bowed his head and asked Gu Dai, "Sister, I'm Su Ting, do you remember me?" When Su Ting looked at Gu Dai, his smile was pure, revealing two small canine teeth. Even when he spoke, it was in a low, gentle voice, as if he was afraid that a louder voice would scare Gu Dai. When Gu Dai heard Su Ting's voice, she took a few seconds before realizing what he had said. She drowsily looked up. Because she was drunk, there was a hint of mist in her eyes. She earnestly looked at Su Ting's face, tilting her head, Seeing Gu Dai like this, Song Ling laughed, and scoffed at Su Ting, "She doesn't recognize you at all, you should go back to where you came from." "I know you." Song Ling didn't get to finish before Gu Dai interrupted him. Gu Dai, with her eyes sparkling, stared at Su Ting. She said, "You're Su Ting. Although you look different than the Su Ting in my memory, you look more mature, but regardless, you look equally good. I like you." Gu Dai was still blinking at Su Ting, even couldn't help but chuckle foolishly, as if she was about to drool. Looking at Gu Dai's behavior, Su Ting found it incredibly cute, then he also spoke indulgently, "I like you too, sister." On the side, Song Ling's face turned stern in an instant, completely losing the triumph he had before, and his hand unconsciously clenched again. "Ouch!" Gu Dai exclaimed in pain, quickly turning her head to look at Song Ling. Looking at the culprit that caused her pain, she directly raised her hand and slapped him, then quickly withdrew her hand while Song Ling was still stunned. After Gu Dai withdrew her hand, Su Ting gently lifted her hand and then gently massaged it to alleviate Gu Dai's pain. However, even though her hand was being massaged by Su Ting and the pain had subsided quite a bit, Gu Dai was still feeling irritated. She looked at Song Ling again and said directly, "Do you have an issue?" "Look carefully at who I am, Gu Dai." Song Ling didn't believe that after recognizing him, Gu Dai would still act like this. Although she had been acting strange since she fell and bumped her head yesterday, Song Ling just thought she was not sober and was temporarily angry for not wanting to divorce him. Essentially, she still didn't want to leave him, and her coming to the bar to drink tonight was a manifestation of her reluctance after sobering up. But what Song Ling didn't expect was that Gu Dai just responded with a glare. After her gaze lingered on the slap mark on his face for 2 or 3 seconds, she casually said, "Big pig head." "What did you say?" No one had ever spoken to him like this since he was a child. Song Ling was furious and asked Gu Dai with disbelief in his tone, then he threatened, "Try saying that again. You are a big pig head, not only will I say it once, but I'll also say it many times. Big pig head, big pig head, big pig head." After a few drinks, Gu Dai was not only bold but also a bit childish. Song Ling's breathing gradually became heavier. His eyes darkened, and he couldn't bear it any longer. He lifted his hand, wanting to hit Gu Dai, but in the end, he retracted it. However, when Song Ling made a move, Su Ting noticed it. He took a step forward, hiding Gu Dai behind him, and faced Song Ling. Seeing Gu Dai and Su Ting standing together, Song Ling felt it was very irritating. He gritted his teeth and said, "I am Song Ling." "Song Ling." Gu Dai tilted her head and recalled for a moment, "Oh, I remember now. You're that jerk, right?" I remember we're already divorced. What are you doing here? Song Ling was once again at a loss for words. The moment he saw Su Ting trying to take Gu Dai away, his head buzzed, and without thinking, he rushed down.